these are puppets that I worked with back in 2012. I made these along with an artist, Polina Porras, for El Museo de Barrio in New York City for their Three Kings Day parade. And they asked us to make these giant puppets. And I think everyone has sort of an early memory of puppets. And this for me is sort of not my earliest memory of puppets, but the earliest memory I have of really engaging with puppets as an adult and as an artist, and really trying to think through what are puppets and what does it look like to really think through puppets as a form. And one of the things we were really trying to think about is how do we express an idea of what these puppets are about through their movement? And so these are designed to be puppets that really have an outsized presence. They can really capture people's attention out in large spaces and give them a kind of very intense, focused experience of a different relationship to that space. But it also means that it also changes how we think about the relationship between the puppet and the human form, both in terms of the puppet and an audience. Like, what does it mean when the puppet is so much bigger than you? But also, what does it mean as a puppeteer to think about animating an object that you're in and is so much bigger than you? And so we really thought long and hard about a number of things. So first of all, what does it look like to have giant puppets coming down the street, and how does that get experienced by the people watching the parade? But also, what does it mean for the movements of the puppet itself? And so these puppets were really designed to convey the subtle kinds of movements that come with bearing gifts. And so these puppets are really designed to balance and to express that idea of balance and being on a journey carrying something. They are three kings, but they also are drawing on earlier traditions from Latin America, and particularly early Taino mythology. And so Polina in particular really thought about how we can sort of connect this modern parade to a longer tradition, and sort of create some interesting questions about what does it mean to carry ideas forward in different forms. Each of the kings here represent a different element from Taino mythology. This one here represents the night sky, and the gift they're carrying is actually a bat. And you can see the bat is sort of on its side with its wing here, and then underneath the wing is actually the night sky. And so this is really interesting because it's a sort of much more abstract notion of a gift, and it connects it to a much larger cosmology, but also a very elemental way of thinking. And then this one is carrying the stump of a tree, and you can see, of course, the tree-like nature of the puppet. And that really expresses the idea of the tree as being a sort of central axis of the world. And then this third one represents the sea and water, and is carrying a shell out of which is coming a turtle, which is also a very strong image in Taino mythology as well. So we spent a good solid 3, if not more, months working on these things, very intensely within the space of the museum itself. And of course, we knew all along that these were intended to be part of a parade. But we were so focused on really trying to pull them together and troubleshoot so many different aspects that it was more of a kind of speculative idea. And then when the day of the parade came and we finally took them out and they started to take life on the streets, it was quite a surprise, which you would think we would have been prepared for. But I think there's something about seeing them come to life and really take on that life in the environment in which they were intended in the first place that's just remarkable. And so I remember very distinctly just being kind of in awe of them as they came up and started to walk and move in the streets of New York City. And then as the parade went on, also just seeing them in relationship to the parade itself and all the people who were there for the parade was another real eye-opener. And again, you would think, of course they're going to have an audience, but there's something very different about seeing the audience react to them, and you think, oh, right, it's not just that these are meant for a parade, but a parade is the people. The parade is the relationships. And to see the looks on children's faces as they saw them come down the street, but also adults, right? Also, adults all of a sudden became very childlike and like just sort of just amazed by them walking down the street. That really, I think, reminded me of the value of putting all this effort in, of really thinking through these ideas and bringing them out into the world, and seeing that they're not just objects that express an idea, but that expression of an idea is through a community, it is through a space, is in relationship to a neighborhood, and all the other relationships that are going on there. So it was really extraordinary for me. So one of the things that I didn't actually really predict, and I should have, it should have been obvious, is that when you make puppets for a parade like this, that they're going to have a life of their own. And so I was so focused on really that first parade that it quite surprised me that they keep coming out year after year. And so if you want to see these puppets, they walk in New York every January 6th, unless the 6th falls on a weekend, in which case they oftentimes move it so that it's during a weekday. And I think one of the reasons for that is because um, the children are in school in the neighborhood, and you'll see that the parade goes by a number of schools with the children out in the yards, and so the children really have a chance together to see these puppets walk down the street and animate their neighborhood, but also give them a very different experience of their school and their school's place in the neighborhood as well. And so there's something really inspiring about that notion of education. That education isn't just what happens in the classroom, and then what happens in the yard is recess or blowing off steam or something like that. But schools are always in relationship to the spaces around them, and those spaces can be animated differently. And how we think about those spaces is an educational project. And it also reminds us, I think, that education is about our relationship to our communities and our neighborhoods, and how we can think about those differently, but also in relationship to a long history. And it also really reminds me of how much these are fundamentally educational, not in a sort of didactic way, but in the sense they really allow us to think and imagine differently, and to have puppets like this that are meant to be out in the street for a moment, sort of pause here and be in this educational institution and allow us to think about the history that happened in this institution as well, around education in New York City, is particularly meaningful. And I think it creates a lot of just really beautiful resonances between all these different aspects that go into thinking about education, about place, about what it means to move from place to place. And also, I mean, also, what does it mean to bring gifts from one place to another? And so we could think of these as a great gift to Teachers College for a moment from the museum, for us to reflect on what does it mean to think about sort of these much larger questions of education and place.